Hey all. So, lots of drama in the
Listen to me, Republicans! Listen!
political sphere right now.
You are the people in history they warned us about!
What the?
They warned us about people like you!
Hey lady, I'm trying to...
Pay attention! We're losing our democracy! Wake up! Wake up!
Hey, where'd you... Well, that was interesting. So, as I was saying, lots of drama in the political sphere right now. I know, what else isn't new? One of the most contentious elections in U.S. history, some say. We need to safeguard the future of our country, others say. The rhetoric of the Biden-Harris campaign was centered around the concept of a battle for the soul of our nation. Well, that in addition to vote blue no matter who, and at least I'm not the other guy. For those of you who don't read the Boston Globe, they classify Trump's legal campaign over election irregularities, because, at least according to Google, use of the F word constitutes misinformation when referring to this subject, as nothing less than a siege on the concept of democracy itself. I'm not using that language to be hyperbolic. That is actually what some folks have said. Hearing this, reading this, of course, I have some questions. As of the writing of this video, the election has been recently electorally settled. That in air quotes, because the actual count of the electoral votes isn't until January. However, several states and several lawsuits are still in litigation. However, the Democratic Party and the news industry both went ahead and proclaimed Joe Biden the president-elect. The Biden campaign then started referring to themselves in their official communications as the office of the president-elect. One wonders, if they're so sure that the legitimate voice of the people chose them and the actual office of the POTUS is theirs come inauguration, why the unnecessary ostentation? Some have pointed out the oddness of feeling the need to refer to your transition team this way, and they have been chided for it. But while there is a history of elected officials attaching the title to their transition organizations, no, it isn't an official government office, and it never has been. For weeks after November 4th, there were demands that President Trump, Trump voters, and his enablers concede for the sake of the country.
The President of the United States still has not conceded this race, and if the nation weren't so numb to his antics, it would shake America to its democratic core, and it still might.
In your view, it is time for him to concede?
Absolutely. Well, I think it was time for him to concede probably the day after the election.
CNN, from the last election, has swung from saying that voter fraud is vanishingly rare.
Everybody has an anecdote of some kind, maybe an urban myth, but some anecdote of seeing a bus full of people crossing a state border. But here's what they truly found, and let's put it up again for people. 146 million total registered voters. Out of those, there were 2,068 alleged voter fraud cases, okay? So it does happen. It's not Bigfoot.
The allegations happen.
Okay, the allegations happen.
Two claiming that there was no such thing.
There is no widespread voter fraud. I'm going to say that again. There is no widespread voter fraud. And if you believe that, you're being played. Okay? This is the most secure election in our history.
Still others imply that there is no evidence for such claims. Unfounded, they say.
Michigan, in this ridiculous hearing on unfounded widespread voter fraud. Again, the Trump lawyers have lost.
There is absolutely no merit to any claims of widespread voter fraud in Arizona.
You'll even be told that a sitting attorney general said that there was no mass election fraud, even when that clearly isn't what he said. And they will do so with a quote in the same presentation. Exactly how stupid do these folks think the general public is? You could ask them directly, but I doubt you'd like the answer. Is the inclusion of the terms mass and widespread supposed to linguistically neutralize all the evidence of irregularity we see on a local or county level because there's no way to prove overarching national organization? And what does that say about those that we're supposed to trust to keep us accurately informed when they'll stoop to such tactics to cover for accusations of inaccuracy or bias? You see, we're actually being shown this evidence by other sources.
A judge ordered it be released, and let me just read you one quote from section B, subsection 2, saying, "We conclude that Dominion voting systems is intentionally and purposefully designed with inherent errors to create systemic fraud and influence election results. The system intentionally generates an enormously high number of ballot errors. The electronic ballots are then transferred for adjudication. The intentional errors lead to bulk adjudication of ballots with no oversight, no transparency, and no audit trail. This leads to voter or election fraud. Based on our study, we conclude that the Dominion voting system should not be used in Michigan. We further conclude the results of Antrim County should not have been certified."
What happens is everyone clears out, including the Republican observers in the press, but 4 people stay behind. Okay, so what you're going to see happen at about 11 o'clock is once everyone is gone, coast is clear, they are going to pull ballots out from underneath a table.
Are we supposed to ignore or reject the evidence because the biases of formerly trusted media means they chose not to show it in favor of insults and accusations? Are we supposed to reject the presented testimony or footage as fake or altered simply because those showing it choose not to make the correct accusations but are showing the receipts? These claims that it's over and the people's voice refutes Trump are backed by others who think or feel that the Trump presidency was never legitimate to begin with, mostly based on still unproven allegations of Russian interference.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president who got illegitimate foreign help. He knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
Why do you think the president is going to such great lengths to essentially prove that he beat you?
Because he knows he didn't. He knows he's an illegitimate president. I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him illegitimate?
And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
These thoughts and feelings, in some cases, veer off into vituperant hostility. In the case of one Keith Olbermann, on the show he proudly calls The Resistance, he refers to the 2016 election as a setup for a Russian coup in an act of war against America.
We are no longer a sovereign nation. We are no longer a democracy. We are no longer a free people. We are the victims of a bloodless coup. So far, a bloodless coup engineered by Russia with, at best, the traitorous indifference of the Republican Party and Donald John Trump, a man who, to borrow a phrase from another December long ago, will live in infamy. In 5 weeks' time, unless desperate measures are taken, we will hand over the government to a man who lost the popular vote by more than Woodrow Wilson or Jimmy Carter won it. A man whom the Russians wanted to run our country for them, a man whom the Russians got to run our country for them, a man for whom the Russians interfered with our elections, which if we did it to another country would be described as an act of war.
Now, if they still haven't let go of that surety that Her turn was stolen a full 4 years later. Do they understand how demanding immediate acceptance may appear so very hypocritical? Given the rhetoric used by some and restated by others with such relish, do they understand how this appears to be a view based not in reaction to rational concern for the American people, but to hate? These claims come in addition to the standard slate of accusations of both the president and the American people in general isting and being phobic for the last 4 years. Well, we'll get to those in a sec. Since Biden's apparent win, there has been a call for unity in the United States.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify. For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now, let's give each other a chance.
From his team and supporters stating that now is the time to heal the damage done to the country in the years of the ostensibly evil Trump presidency.
We've faced hard times before. So once this election is finalized and behind us, it'll be time for us to do what we've always done as Americans. To put the harsh rhetoric of the campaign behind us, to lower the temperature, to see each other again, to listen to one another, to hear each other again, and respect and care for one another, to unite, to heal, to come together as a nation.
Well, actually, evil Trump and anybody who doesn't agree with the Progressive Party line. So far, these calls have come across as phony, as condescension and accusation.
Because he is the president of the United States. That office means something, and that office should have some shred of decency. Now, we always knew he would leave a stain there, and not just from his butt bronzer, because everything he did, everything, is now in some way presidential behavior, including this, unless every single person rejects what he just did. And that means for all the predictable behavior of the last few days and the last 4 years, right now something unpredictable needs to happen. Republicans have to speak up. All of them.
As hypocritical commands to suck it up and know your place from the loudest of complainers.
She didn't say, this isn't right, I'm not going for it. She didn't say any of that. So all of you, suck it up. Suck it up like we sucked it up. And if you are not sure that you're comfortable with Joe Biden, do what we did. Find things and then take it to the law. And if the law says it's something to look at it. But from now on, suck it up.
With supposed hopeful forgiveness, as well as demands that those opposed unreservedly support the person that they voted against in the interests of progress. Why is it, I wonder, that all the calls to unite entail people outside the Democratic Party or adherents to progressive dogma being commanded to toe the correct line? Are there no reasonable requests that the Dems could acquiesce to? Or do that side of the argument simply consider themselves above compromise? Is it an authoritarian attitude? Is it a proclivity to view those outside your immediate bubble as lower entities worthy only of command and instruction at best? Is it, maybe, a declaration that those you hate for their views should simply stop being in your way and disappear? Well, we'll get to that too. Of course, not all those speaking on the reputedly victorious side of the election have been so magnanimous. The idea has been forwarded that enablers of the Trump administration should be archived, and despite linguistic contortions, this is in fact a call to establish a blacklist. They even demand that such people be re-educated. And then, in a staggering case of nothing ever being good enough, there are the same people who proudly proclaimed themselves the resistance and consistently demanded the impeachment, removal from office, and arrest of the president, who are currently demanding that those questioning or even opposing the winner in a still contested election instantly stop resisting and kowtow to the demands that Biden be recognized on all levels as the president-elect.
All Americans can take pride that our nation has a female vice president-elect for the very first time.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, he could have shown the pride that he felt as soon as it was abundantly clear that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had won. But of course, he didn't do that. So he's not the only one who finally accepted the outcome of the election. Republican Senator John Thune also publicly accepted today. And their whole argument is, well, we wanted to wait for the electors, which of course voted yesterday to confirm the fact that Biden won the general election. But in previous election cycles, I don't remember lawmakers waiting until electors had cast their ballots in order to accept the results of the election.
There are even calls for prison rape rather than actual effort toward any sort of unity. Some folks also demand that Trump and his supporters be driven from society, arrested, or destroyed. Right, Keith?
Trump can be and must be expunged. The hate he has triggered, the Pandora's box he has opened, they will not be so easily destroyed. So, let us brace ourselves. The task is twofold. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he and his enablers and his supporters and his collaborators and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Sean Hannitys and the Mike Pences and the Rudy Giulianis and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it and to rebuild the world Trump has nearly destroyed by turning it over to a virus.
Nope. No hate there. Just a reasonable concern for the good of everyone in a bad situation. Right? Further, I see a continuation of the accusations leveled at Trump voters and Trump supporters from the last election. Van Jones' whitelash.
And then you have this outcome, and you have people putting children to bed tonight, and they're afraid of breakfast. They're afraid of, how do I explain this to my children? I have Muslim friends who are texting me tonight saying, should I leave the country? I have families of immigrants that are terrified tonight. This was many things. This was a rebellion against the elites. True, it was a complete reinvention of politics and polls, it's true. But it was also something else. We've talked about race. I mean, we've talked about everything but race tonight. We've talked about income. We've talked about class. We've talked about region. We haven't talked about race. This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part.
And other accusations of widespread voter racism.
What he revealed about America, and to the unprincipled scum who have been for decades merely pretending they are not racist, they are not homophobic, they are not anti-Semitic, they are not anti-democracy, they are not obsessed with violence and death, the shy haters. What he revealed is they will not go away just because Trump concedes an election. They have been authenticated by him. They have been told that their failures are somebody else's fault. They have been reassured that their worthlessness is the result of enemy A, or enemy B, or enemy C. They have been given 5 years in the sunlight, and they are a blight that will be with us for generations. There can be no mistaking what is ahead of us in this best of possible scenarios, a period in which a Trump-led minority will continue to terrorize this country. And Trump, whose only barely human delight comes from the applause of the morons in the crowd, will seek that pleasure again and endlessly until the day he dies. We unleashed this terrorism via the activating mechanism of reality television. Trump unleashed his terrorists via the activating mechanism of encouraging them to hate.
The idea that having Trump in office emboldens hate crime, and that those who voted for Trump did so only because of supporting hate for the right people. It's also interesting that a primetime anchor would consider a particular large part of his fellow Americans to homogeneously be the country's biggest terror threat based only on race, sex, and party affiliation.
So we have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right. And we have to start doing something about them. There is no travel ban on them. There is no ban on, they had the Muslim ban. There is no white guy ban. So what do we do about that?
Or that a black elected official thinks keeping blacks out of power is the only reason one would vote for Trump. One reporter goes so far as to say that there is no hope for meaningful dialogue or reconciliation, and that Trump's supporters are beyond helping because they wouldn't give up their beliefs at his urging. They went from calling him Loser Donald, the criminal-in-chief, or Putin's cockholster, to being enraged at the very idea of questioning the legitimacy of a vote count. They say that to do so now is to threaten our democracy, that those who dare to do so are the worst kind of seditious criminals, trying, oddly enough, to stage a coup against the legitimate government. They say that such people should be made to pay.
And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it. Do it right. Be in order. Make them pay.
So, if you hate people with differing opinions and priorities so much that you'll call for them to be identified, rounded up, and punished or eliminated simply for how they think or what they believe, is there a term for that? Yeah. It's called bigotry. So, to our new governing administration and the party behind them, the press and pundits who support them, which is it, guys? Do you want unity or officially sanctioned bigotry? If you can seriously, in back-to-back sentences, say that you'll be able to work with certain people, but that you consider them a bunch of f***s, do you see how that comes off as two-faced and arrogantly untrustworthy? What are the people questioning the election results actually questioning? Is it wrong, as has been implied, for these people to question those results? Why was it okay for the Democrats to do so in 2016 and for the whole of Trump's run as president, but not in this election? As always, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind here. I'm saying that how the subject is presented seems hinky, and it raises a lot of questions. And I don't think I'm the only one asking.